You are in the middle of a conversation, and as the words leave your mouth, you feel a distinct sensation that something simply does not fit. It is a subtle friction in the air. It isn't that you are lacking the right words. It isn't that you are explaining yourself poorly or that your logic is flawed. In fact, you are doing everything right. You simplify your language. You use crystal clear examples. You change your angle of approach. You look them in the eyes and ensure that they are nodding, that they are verbally confirming they understand you. On the surface, everything seems to be flowing. But then, mere minutes later, the reality hits you. You realize they didn't grasp a single thing. The message didn't just fade, it was lost completely. There is no trace of your central idea in their mind. And in that moment, a very specific, familiar sensation washes over you. A heavy mixture of self-doubt and deep, existential exhaustion. You ask yourself, how can it be so difficult to understand something so incredibly evident? Perhaps this wasn't just one isolated conversation. Perhaps this is a pattern you have lived through hundreds of times. Maybe it's not just one specific person, but several. You are surrounded by people who repeat the exact same errors over and over again. People who ignore clear, tangible proof. People who discard simple, linear reasoning, and yet, somehow, remain totally, arrogantly convinced that they are right. We are talking about people who consistently choose what they feel over what they think. You look at them, you observe their lives, and you genuinely wonder, how is it possible for a human being to function like this? Arthur Schopenhauer asked himself this exact same question over 200 years ago, and he didn't ask it out of petty anger or mockery. He asked it from a place of cold, constant observation of human conduct. What he discovered was not comfortable. It was not polite, but it was brutally honest. Schopenhauer understood a fundamental truth that most of us are afraid to admit. The majority of people do not fail to reason because they lack information. They fail because they lack the actual hardware, the capacity to process it. This is incredibly difficult to accept because it goes against everything the modern world has taught us. We have been conditioned to believe that everyone is equal in potential. We were told that anyone can understand complex topics if they are explained well enough. We were told that critical thinking is a choice and that intelligence is common. Schopenhauer disagreed entirely. For him, that egalitarian view was a comforting illusion that serves only one purpose: to generate endless frustration for those who can think. According to his vision, the vast majority of people do not think. They believe, they repeat, they absorb the ideas of others and defend them as their own without ever having examined them for a single second. Test this yourself. When you present them with logic, they respond with pre-packaged phrases they heard somewhere else. When you show them undeniable evidence, they react with emotional outbursts. When you point out a direct contradiction in their argument, they don't pause to reflect. They cling even tighter to their original stance. You need to understand what is happening here. They are not dialoguing with you. They are defending an internal system that they never chose, and because they didn't choose it, they cannot question it. Here is where the paradigm shifts for you. The problem is not that you are a bad communicator. The problem is not that you lack patience. The problem is that you are expecting thought in a place where thought does not exist. You are looking for analysis where only mechanical repetition exists. As long as you continue to expect high-level processing from low-level hardware, you will continue crashing against the same wall. Schopenhauer observed something key here. When you interact with people who cannot think at a certain level, a real exchange of ideas is physically impossible. There is no dialogue. There is no progress. There is only attrition and waste. The sooner you accept this biological reality, the sooner you stop suffering because of it. This acceptance is not about arrogance. It has nothing to do with feeling superior or looking down on others. It is about seeing reality with absolute clarity. You must understand that not all minds function the same way. Many people operate almost entirely on automatic pilot, following habits, inherited beliefs, and basic emotional reactions. Deep intelligence, the capacity to analyze, to doubt oneself, to change one's opinion in the face of better arguments, is an incredibly rare trait. It is not distributed evenly across the population. When you truly internalize this, something settles inside you. You stop being surprised by absurd decisions. You stop getting indignant when people make the same mistake for the 10th time. You stop wasting your precious life force trying to convince someone who was never biologically equipped to understand you. Schopenhauer spent years observing this pattern. He saw how the majority of people do not access reason. They access authority. They are not moved by what is true. They are moved by what is accepted by their tribe. They do not seek to comprehend. They seek to belong. And when someone questions that belonging, they don't listen. They attack. Reaching this level of awareness already separates you from the herd. Most people do not have the mental fortitude to sustain these truths without running back to the comfort of the group. That is why I want you to make a tangible commitment right now. I want you to leave a mark that signifies you are taking a different path. Go to the comments and write, "I will not be part of the herd." Do not do this as a mechanical habit. Do it as the initiation of your own path toward interior freedom. Now, let's go deeper. This is where the practical application begins. The first movement of the intelligent person is the withdrawal of expectations. They stop expecting critical thinking where it cannot exist. They reserve their reasoning only for those few capable of receiving it. By adjusting their expectations to the brutal reality of the world, they liberate themselves from an enormous emotional burden. This might sound harsh to some, but it is deeply liberating. Why? Because 90% of your frustration does not come from other people's stupidity. It comes from the distance between what you expect of them and what they can actually give. When you close that gap, the suffering vanishes. Schopenhauer understood that you do not fail when someone doesn't understand you. You simply encounter the limits of their mind. You wouldn't explain quantum physics to a toddler. In the same way, you cannot expect deep, nuanced thought from someone who can only handle simple, rigid slogans. Accepting this doesn't make you cold. It makes you clear. You start giving each person exactly what they can handle. Nothing more, nothing less. You move forward without attachment, without frustration, and without the neurotic need to be understood by everyone you meet. But this is just the starting point. Once you accept that real intelligence is scarce, you notice something even more disturbing. Have you noticed that the people with the least capacity to think are usually the most confident? They are the most aggressive when defending their ideas. They are the least willing to doubt. Understanding why this happens will change how you interact with the world forever. The rule is simple. The less someone understands, the louder they speak. This is not a minor detail. It is a diagnostic signal. Doubt is a high-level intellectual skill. It is uncomfortable. To doubt, you must be able to step outside yourself, look at your own ideas and ask, does this hold up? For many people, that internal operation simply does not exist. That is why you see them defend a mistake, as if it were a sacred religious truth. You show them data, and they brush it aside with unearned confidence. You point out a flaw, and they look at you with disdain. You ask a calm question, and they treat it as an act of war. They are not protecting the truth. they are protecting their safety. And when someone's internal security is fragile, they protect it with aggression. Schopenhauer saw this without any filters. He understood that confidence is often born of ignorance, because ignorance has no brakes. When you don't see the complexity of the world, everything looks simple to you. When you can't perceive nuance, you think there are only two options: us and them. When you have no tools to audit your own thinking, you feel like you are standing on concrete, even when you are standing on quicksand. This is the trap that destroys smart people. You try to argue, you try to clarify, but the other person isn't looking for a door. They are locked inside a bunker of certainty. That certainty isn't fueled by reason. It is fueled by pride, by fear, and by the desperate need to belong. Your logic is not competing against their logic. Your logic is competing against their identity. Schopenhauer essentially said that intellect is invisible to the person who does not have it. This explains the pain of these interactions. You think, if I just make it clear, they will see it. But to recognize depth, the observer needs depth. If they don't have it, they will confuse complexity with confusion. They will confuse nuance with weakness. This is the origin of that manipulative phrase. If it were true, you could explain it simply, as if the universe has an obligation to be easy for them to understand. Sometimes, simplifying doesn't make things clearer. It breaks the truth. When you understand this, you stop chasing a validation that costs you too much. You stop seeking approval from people who lack the measuring tools to value what you are offering. And you also realize something practical about the toll this takes on you. The exhaustion doesn't just come from the disagreement. It comes from constantly lowering your own intellect just so they can follow along. You start cutting corners on your own ideas. You avoid the subtle points. You speak in black and white. Without realizing it, the conversation deforms you. You end up defending a poor, poverty-stricken version of your own thoughts, and you leave that interaction feeling dirty, as if you betrayed your own clarity just to sustain a conversation that wasn't worth having. Schopenhauer was brutal about this. There are debates that are futile, not because of the topic, but because of the person you are debating with. In these scenarios, insisting is not a virtue. It is not patience. It is self-sabotage. The price you pay is your calm and your lucidity. There is a darker detail here too. Many people are not just confused. They feel threatened by clarity. Precision exposes their confusion, and that exposure provokes a defense response. So they stop discussing your ideas and start discussing you. They attack your tone. They attack your character. They call you arrogant. They call you too complicated. Not because you are wrong, but because your way of thinking highlights a deficiency they are terrified to look at. If this has happened to you, observe your own impulse. You almost always want to double down. You want to explain more. You want to prove you aren't arrogant. You want to win. But Schopenhauer pushes you toward a silent, powerful decision. Don't enter. Knowing how to retreat in time is a superior form of intelligence. It isn't applauded because nobody sees it. It's an internal victory, but it leaves you with the most valuable resource you have: energy. With that saved energy, you start to view conversations differently. You notice that most opinions are not born from thinking. They are born from feeling. First comes the fear, the anger, the insecurity. Then, the mind fabricates reasons to justify what the gut has already decided. Logic cannot penetrate this shield because you aren't fighting ideas. You are fighting emotions disguised as arguments. When someone explodes at you, It's not because they found a flaw in your logic. It's because you touched a nerve. When someone mocks what they don't understand, it isn't humor, it is defense. When someone demands simple answers to complex problems, it isn't a desire for clarity. It is anxiety about what they cannot control. So, the intelligent person does not try to educate the world. They learn to measure. Sometimes, the correct response is a short, neutral phrase, not to win, but to close the subject. Sometimes you listen without correcting, because you understand that correcting them will only trigger their resistance. And when you do speak, you save your best words for the people who can actually hear them. But protection is not enough. We need to go beyond defense. The question that remains is, how do you act in a world dominated by impulse and stupidity without becoming bitter, isolated, or misanthropic? Schopenhauer proposes something more useful than bitterness: strategic acceptance. There is a massive difference between despising people and understanding them. Despising them consumes you. It keeps you in a state of war with reality. Understanding them allows you to maneuver. When you accept that most people decide based on what makes them feel safe rather than what is true, you start speaking to the world as it is, not as you wish it were. Schopenhauer noted that as soon as a person dissolves into a group, their IQ drops. When the tribe is present, the mind switches to belonging mode. Phrases get shorter, ideas get rigid. The fear of being an outsider overrides the desire to be correct. The intelligent person never tries to reason with a crowd. Why? Because a crowd doesn't want to think. A crowd wants to feel united. So what do? You change your focus. Instead of burning yourself out trying to convince the majority, you concentrate entirely on the small percentage of people who are awake. You don't need everyone to understand. You need the right people to understand. Schopenhauer also warned us that truth is an irritant before it is a cure. When you say something that shatters a comfortable delusion, the first reaction is not gratitude. It is rejection. It is silence. It is anger. This is because the truth forces change, and change hurts. In the real world, speaking the truth doesn't always win you friends. Often, it creates enemies. The intelligent person learns not to cast pearls before swine. They do not give the truth to those who did not ask for it. They choose the time, the place, and the person. Saying the right thing to the wrong person is not a virtue. It is a tactical error that will be punished. Here is a key idea Schopenhauer repeated. People do not change because you showed them facts. They change when life forces them to see themselves differently. That is an internal process. You cannot force it from the outside. So stop treating every conversation as a mission to save someone from their own ignorance. You won't succeed, and you will leave empty. Instead, work with what is there. Put up cold, calm boundaries. Know when a conversation has crossed the point of utility, and close it without drama. Know when silence is the most dominant response you can offer. When you accept that many people run on automatic software, they become predictable. Their reactions repeat. Their decisions follow patterns. They seek the easy, the familiar, and the approved. When you see these patterns, you stop living in a state of shock. You start to anticipate. You know exactly when someone is going to misinterpret a nuance as a threat. You know when a topic will turn into a fight, no matter how calmly you speak. You know when someone is promising to understand just to avoid feeling inferior, only to revert to their old behavior tomorrow. With this foresight, your life becomes lighter. You stop walking into rooms where you already know the outcome. And finally, we must address the cost of this clarity. The more clearly you think, the harder it is to find company. This is not because you are better, but because mental compatibility is rare. Schopenhauer lived this. For him, solitude was not a tragedy. It was a consequence of excellence. It is not pride that isolates you. It is the contrast between your mind and the noise around you. Many conversations will feel small to you. Many topics will feel shallow. If you try to force deep connection where it cannot exist, you will break yourself. The solution is not to become cold. The solution is to become selective. Build strong bonds with the few who can sustain your mental pace. With everyone else, maintain a simple, functional relationship without exaggerated expectations. This is ultimately how intelligent people deal with idiots, according to Schopenhauer. Not by trying to fix them, not by losing their cool, but by adjusting expectations, choosing battles, guarding their energy, and speaking with precision only when there is fertile ground to receive it.